Senator Franken has done good work on these issues, and he is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a bill I've introduced, the Local Energy Supply and Resilience Act, and it speaks to a number of issues that we've raised on transmission. These are generally distributed generation projects, so they don't really require transmission. They can work in island mode, et cetera. They can feed into a grid if they need to, and they do in certain areas. Let me talk about combined heat and power. In the U.S., up to 36% of all energy we consume is lost from power plants and industrial facilities and buildings as waste heat. This is 36% of all energy that we produce in the country. We can capture waste heat and put it to use. We do that in the city of St. Paul. They burn biomass. It's really from the city, from the tree trimmings and that stuff, and they burn that biomass, generate electricity. They heat and cool 80% of the buildings in downtown St. Paul. There's another benefit from using biomass. Senator Risch has talked about all the hazardous fuel there are, and we're having these terrible, terrible wildfires, and he's talked about we're losing all the money we're using to fight these fires sometimes comes away from eliminating some of this hazardous fuel. So that's why I've done this bill, and I'm kind of trying to thread a needle here because I want to do this through 1703, and this is proven technology. I think the needle here, though, has a very big eye. And because the 1703 program still has, am I right, it has $34 billion still in loan authority? Is that right, Mr. Davidson?
Roughly that amount.
Okay. Well, it is a proven technology, so it's not about, but it's about, Mr. Zindler, you talked about scale, scale, scale. It's about scaling up something that works and that works well, works in island mode, so when you have these disruptive storms like Sandy, and we saved a lot of money in places like in Princeton, New Jersey, where they had data centers that didn't go down because they had combined heat and power. But to scale this up, we need the upfront cost. You know, we need, how big a problem is the upfront cost of these things, Mr. Kaufman?
I think this issue of CHP is a very good example where there are financing gaps, because it's very difficult, for example, to have CHP as a service. In other words, somebody will have to buy the equipment. And energy is, after all, an operating expense. And so it's perfectly understandable that somebody would want to substitute one operating expense for another operating expense. So CHP is a good example of where it's not so much the need for subsidized financing, but for the ability to get the financing. And that financing is difficult to obtain either on a large scale with either banks or from the capital markets. So you don't have financing widely available. I would also observe, by the way, that you talked about wildfires. In Texas, Governor just signed a bill promoting CHP because it reduces the quantity of water that's used from central station power generation. So it's not only good in terms of capturing waste heat, it's actually, CHP is also good in terms of reducing water consumption.
Yeah, I think, how much could we scale up this sort of renewable use of renewable energy if we had the right finance?
Well,
this is Mr. Davidson.
I'm sorry.
Or,
Once
Mr. Hoffman.
I'm sorry. So I wanted to
you.
point out, because I am in New York, and so this issue about resiliency is really critical. And so we have a financing product that's coming out of our Green Bank that's going to be focused specifically on trying to leverage private sector capital to finance CHP. And so CHP is absolutely a critical area of interest for us for both resiliency as well as value for customers.
Well, I think in my subcommittee, I think we're going to have pretty soon, I hope, a hearing on state-based programs, what states are doing. Minnesota has been, in terms of opening demand for these renewable and for energy efficiency and those kind of programs. I'd love to ask you to participate in that.
Senator, if I can just jump in on that. The issues of CHP are very significant. It is a huge way to reduce carbon footprint if we can start moving the needle ahead on that. And there are great new technologies becoming available for that can really help speed the introduction and the market adoption of CHP. I'd like you to be aware that in the new fossil solicitation that I've mentioned that's coming out, that is really about lower carbon uses, ways in the extraction of fossil fuels we can lower the carbon footprint, ways in dealing with existing industrial and energy processes we can lower the carbon footprint. Things like retrofits fit into that solicitation. But a very large part of what we expect to be coming in as applications is the area of reducing fossil fuels through energy efficiency measures. So combined heat and power, waste heat recovery, microgrids, fuel cells are all things that will fully qualify, assuming the other metrics are met, a reasonable prospect of repayment, greenhouse gas reduction, and a new technology. Those are the type of programs that could be financed through the fossil solicitation. So I would encourage you to look at that, and if we could discuss that further, that is something we're very interested in doing.
I would love to follow up with that, and I'm out of time, but I just, Mr. Loris, I apologize because you won't have a chance to respond to this, but I'd just like you to think about things like the Erie Canal, which the government paid for, and Mr. Kaufman knows about. It opened up because, and this was actually the state government of New York, it increased the efficiency of moving goods from the Midwest right to Europe, because it came through the Great Lakes to the Erie Canal, down the Hudson River. We could sell our timber and it opened the Midwest to the world and made transporting our goods, our crops, our timber, improved it by 97% the efficiency. And that was really just something the government paid for. And I had this discussion in the Help Committee with a witness from AEI who started his testimony saying that it's a myth that the federal government creates jobs, and ended his testimony after I went through all these things like the interstate highway system, et cetera, to him saying that to say the federal government doesn't create jobs would be absurd, which was kind of a 180-degree change in that. So I wish we had had that chance, and I again apologize for going over, but it used to be my job to identify absurdity.